My name is Joshua Royte, Senior Scientist for the Nature Conservancy in the U.S. state of Maine. I serve on the advisory board of the World Fish Migration Foundation, which produces World Fish Migration Day, From Sea to Source guidance books, and many other projects that connect people to rivers and gives them the tools to understand, promote, and restore rivers to their natural free-flowing state. This is World Fish Migration Day. Have you heard about it? And even more, did you know that nearly all fish travel throughout their rivers? Some up and downstream, some go to the ocean and then thousands of miles beyond before returning back to their streams. Did you know that once upon a time, massive fish migrations was something that happened all around the world yearly? People and wildlife evolved around these natural wonders. They depended on the cycle of life. And now that dams and other barriers nearly wiped them out, we're turning the corner. We're starting to bring these migrations back. World Fish Migration Day was created to reconnect people to our rivers, to excite both fishers and decision makers to the wonders of our rivers. Ultimately, we want to help find a path to restore fish passage and protect rivers that haven't lost their connections yet. This celebration has grown so big, it's really surprised us all. The feedback from thousands of people in dozens of countries around the world makes us realize there's a much larger importance here of connecting passionate people together to hear each other's stories and to learn how to support each other's river restoration work. After working so intently with the amazing World Fish Migration team, I realized I needed to get myself out on the ground and by the water to see these celebrations in person. I celebrated World Fish Migration Day in Richmond, Virginia. Richmond, like so many cities around the world, was built on a river. In this case, it was the historic James River, just a few hours southwest of our nation's capital. And this is a place where the right mix of people were able to pull together a really fun and uplifting event. So you decided, maybe not out of the blue, to host a World Fish Migration Day event here near Richmond. How did that happen?
I do river restoration as my job, and as part of that I started doing fish passage work. And many years ago I started going to the Fish Passage Conference that was out of Amherst, and I started hearing about this event while attending that conference, and I got more involved with the committees that helped establish that conference, and so being on that national committee and just becoming more and more aware of it. It was in 2016 when they had the Happy Fish at the conference.
Yeah.
I was like, this is awesome.
Oh, that's great.
I've got to host one of these in my town.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
Kathy Hoverman from KCI had assembled a many-parted event with help from James River Association, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and Virginia Game and Fisheries, and also American Rivers. Kathy is just one of those rare people with this mix of solid engineering chops, ecological know-how, and a passion for rivers and ability to make things happen. And what got you even interested in rivers and fish to begin with? Has this always been a passion of yours, or?
Well, it was a discovered passion. I'd say I always loved being outside and in nature and hiking and just being athletic outside.
Yeah.
And then when I started studying engineering in school, I realized there was kind of something missing from civil engineering for me. Wastewater and drinking water just didn't have a spark to it. So I picked up a conservation degree, and while doing that I took an ecology class.
Excellent.
And rivers was a featured system of that ecology class. And from there I quit my job in the concrete lab, I started working for the ecology professor, and it just took off from there. And so it was
cool.
it was ready to be made. I just needed the right spark to really lead me in that direction.
While Kathy and the James River event partners were preparing themselves for this long day of multiple events on the river, there are hundreds of other events going on around the world. For World Fish Migration Day 2018, we decided to have regional hubs, headquarters that could bring together information from events all around each of the continents. The James River event in Virginia was the hub for North America. In Europe, the hub was Finland. This included a full day of conferences led by WWF Finland, with local authorities, and a famous Finnish actor, Jasper Pääkkönen. Jasper is a strong advocate for rivers and someone that attracts a great deal of interest and coverage throughout Finland and well beyond. In Africa, the hub was centered in Kruger National Park, South Africa, where there was a 4-day celebration. The National Museum of Natural History in La Paz, Bolivia, was the continental hub for South America. The Khmer Trust hosted the Asia Hub in the country of India, with 2 days of events for children and people of many river communities. By the end of World Fish Migration 2018, when the sun set on the islands of Hawaii, there had been over 570 events celebrated in 63 countries around the world. Over 3,000 organizations joined together to find solidarity in their love and work on behalf of rivers. The James River is lucky to have so many amazing partners. There's nothing like seeing a river from the water, feeling the currents, seeing the birds in the floodplain forest. And in Richmond, there's riverside trails that connect to the heart of this vibrant city. This river is alive with fish migrations now, and the city is making the river one of the best places to experience nature, to find the calm and beauty that can seem so remote for way too many people these days.
Our organization and Bike Walk RVA and a number of other organizations put pressure on the city to really fund that, to make sure that the riverfront was a priority, that it was going to be a place where the public come and really enjoy the river and appreciate this resource that we have. For a long time, like many cities around the country, the James had a very polluted downtown area. We had raw sewage in the river in the mid-20th century. It wasn't until the Clean Water Act in 1972 that we started to see those kinds of improvements where we weren't dumping raw sewage and other kinds of waste into the river.
My brother and sister-in-law were, I was asking them to come if they were going to stop by the Boschers Dam, and they're like, Boschers Dam? Where's Boschers Dam? There's a dam on the James? And just, that idea that they actually cross over the roadway that's right adjacent to the dam, probably a couple times a week, and they had no idea that it was even a dam.
It was really interesting that the events in Richmond were centered around an existing dam. While dams are almost always a problem for rivers and fish, the tour at Boschers Dam showed us how fish ladders are engineered to help many fish get past.
They're giving tours so people can see what a fishway is, how it works, how it functions, how it fits into the landscape, and how the fish can use that to basically bypass and get around the dam.
A lot of smart engineering goes into making fish ladders and fish lifts when dam removal isn't really an option. And while it still makes for a difficult journey for migratory fish, technical fishways can help in some cases to get fish both upstream and downstream to complete their life cycle.
This is just one more way in which people can learn about what culverts and dams and things like that can do to the species and just the food web and how things interact.
You might be asking yourself, what exactly is a free-flowing river? For most people, we think of rivers as beautiful places with moving water that transports people and fish, but it's really hard to know what's going on below the waterline.
So a free-flowing river is one that's connected in 4 fundamental ways. It maintains upstream and downstream connectivity so that sediments and water can flow downstream and fish can flow upstream. And that's really critical. Unfortunately, barriers like dams can block rivers and stop that connectivity. Second is their connection laterally. So the ability of water to move out onto the floodplain and back into the channel. This is really important for sediment flows that flow into floodplains and create habitats and so on the floodplain. A third way is for rivers to maintain their vertical connectivity. So the river water to be able to move down into the groundwater and into aquifers, which can serve as reservoirs for water for human and environmental use. And then the fourth way is seasonally, for the river to maintain its ebbs and flows over time.
Well, fish migration is a natural process. Fish live in rivers and in the ocean, and they're always moving around. But they migrate primarily to reproduce, to have their young. So, for example, anadromous species, fish like salmon and steelhead trout, will actually live in the ocean, and then they come back into the freshwater rivers where they were born to lay their eggs, to spawn, to have their eggs fertilized. And then the eggs hatch and the juvenile fish grow up in the rivers and then eventually go back out to sea.
Fishes, freshwater fishes, they don't have a voice. They're living underwater, they're living in a world that people don't experience very often. It's difficult to see what's going on underneath the water in freshwater. And people just don't know about them. I mean, and some of these fish, they're incredible fish that can grow up to 10 feet in length. And so you think the Mekong giant catfish, world's largest freshwater fish, and 99% of the people on Earth have never even heard of it. So you have these incredibly large, charismatic, important fish that nobody's ever heard about.
So for example, a free-flowing river has a lower temperature, it flows quickly, and fish have evolved in that environment. If you put a dam in, you change that free-flowing river to a slow-moving reservoir. The temperatures go up, the flow of the river is slower, and fish haven't evolved in that environment, and so they don't do well in that.
The rivers of the world need to be protected for several reasons. We as human beings need it. We need the rivers to provide us with food, for example. It's a basic necessity. And we don't have fisheries if we don't have rivers. Many of the world's most important fisheries depend on free-flowing rivers. We're not only talking about salmon, we're talking about many tropical species as well that completely depend on free-flowing, moving rivers. Not only do humans need rivers to provide us with food or provide us with experiences around nature, but the globe, the planet, needs rivers. Rivers are the veins, the life source of the planet. Humankind has been quite efficient in destroying those veins by damming, by other acts. We've been pretty passionate in using our strength and using our force into chaining those rivers and essentially destroying them. Man has historically had the urge and the need to chain rivers. When we understood that we can build a dam, all of a sudden the passion to destroy all these rivers, to build them, to use them to create electricity and other things needed in the industrial world basically created this big boom of damming every single river. Every water that moves was dammed. The myth of hydropower being clean and green is an absurd thought. When you build a dam to create hydropower, essentially you're destroying that river and the whole ecosystem around it. There are no fish moving up and down the river to their migration spots when there's a dam blocking that migration. But also, dams nowadays we know are a huge cause and source of greenhouse emissions, such as methane emissions. So essentially they are a big contributor to climate change. How can you ever call that green or clean in terms of being an energy source when it's the complete polar opposite of that? The majority of people in the world are not aware of the fact that dams are actually a big source of environmental problems. And that's partly because of this very successful advertising campaign of making greenwashing hydropower as a clean source of energy. But luckily nowadays, only during the last few years, people all around the world have started understanding that dams are actually not green, nor clean as a source of energy.
I was 5 years old in 1968. That's when Lyndon B. Johnson announced to the nation his imperative to protect our rivers. After hundreds of years of damming them and polluting them, it was time for change. And that started the U.S. rivers on their path to recovery.
From this moment, 9:30 a.m., July the 1st, 1999, there was no turning back.
Ironically, is progress by going backwards.
Back to 1836, the year before the dam was built. First to power a lumber mill, and later to provide electricity, which it continued to do until 2 years ago, when the U.S. government, under pressure from environmentalists, refused to relicense the dam and ordered its removal. Interior Secretary Bruce Babbitt called it
an act of restoration, a statement about our capacity to honor and respect God's creation.
And the restoration of this river and the fishery is going to provide economic benefits to the people of the Kennebec Valley and the state of Maine that we can only dream of at this point.
But the end of all that was as simple as sitting on a riverbank on a summer day and letting nature take its course for the first time in 162 years.
It's obvious to most of us that dams wipe out fish migrations. We've known this ever since ancient societies first learned how to dam rivers. We live in a time unlike any before us. It's a time when incredibly damaging barriers are just beginning to be removed from many major rivers. We are reconnecting thousands of miles of rivers and streams to the ocean again. For some rivers, this is the first time in over 200 years that fish populations have the chance to grow and expand into this reopened habitat.
We're at the Patapsco River. Behind me is the Bloody Dam, or what's left of it. A few weeks back, we breached the dam. About a 20-foot section was exploded out, so we were able to kind of de-water the impoundment behind. A lot of the water flushed through, bringing a lot of the sediment with it. Once that was complete, the next few weeks were spent just chipping away at the exposed portions of the rest of the dam, heading out to the other bank. And the water just continued to flush, a little bit of a head cut migration, a lot of slumping of the sediments. And now we're ready to do another blast, so it's a pretty exciting day. They're loading actually some explosives right now to do another 20-foot section of the dam. So they'll explode that, they'll remove the debris, and then they'll repeat that process a few more times to get the remainder of the dam out of the river. This is the downstream impediment, the only downstream impediment from here all the way to the Chesapeake Bay. So this will be a huge migratory fish passage area. American Rivers and their team removed 2 other dams just upstream of this, so this is just going to open up a tremendous amount of river for native fish and anadromous fish as well to move through the system and just bring life back to our rivers. Flushing the sediment through is something that downstream rivers need. They need some of that sediment at times to help keep their systems a little more active. So they'll be able to start moving up this as soon as the dam's out of it. As far as restored with like revegetation and everything and the sediment settling down, that'll take a little bit longer.
The bigger challenge for us is to ensure this appreciation and advocacy for river health and the people that depend on them becomes business as usual. To do this, we need to help expand awareness of river health and use our voices, our votes, and funding to advocate for the freeing of rivers and protecting the precious few rivers that remain intact. That's one reason why I went to Washington, D.C., to meet some of these dedicated people working on this.
In 2016, our agency reached the milestone of replacing or upgraded 1,000 culverts for fish passage. And we are planning on restoring another 1,000 culverts by 2020.
Then I went to meet with Craig Goodwin. He's the National Aquatic Ecologist for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is part of the USDA.
Why is World Fish Migration Day important here?
Well, we're at the very point, in essence, where the tide can have an effect upon the river, and where, as we start working our way downstream, we go from freshwater to saltwater. These very important areas like the Chesapeake Bay, these estuaries where these various microenvironments, some salty, some more saline, some less saline, provide a great opportunity for a lot of different habitats for both finned fish and shellfish in the area.
It's such a privilege, and it's so inspiring. You know, here we're in the nation's capital, surrounded by concrete and houses, and this little stream here now has tens of thousands of river herring that come all the way up through the Chesapeake Bay from the high seas of the Atlantic. And they do it every year, whether the water is muddy like today, or clear, or high or low, and it's something that we need to share with the public.
The pace of work being done by these federal agencies, working in conjunction with environmental organizations, has been picking up speed this last decade. More removals of delinquent dams, enlarging road stream crossings so that the fish can get into headwaters, and finding ways to reestablish native fish populations when there aren't enough left to do it on their own.
In the western U.S., we haven't taken very good care of our freshwater fish. In the Colorado, almost all of the native fish of the lower Colorado are now either gone or endangered. Salmon populations in the Columbia River, in terms of biomass of wild salmon, have declined by probably 90%. And so in these rivers in the western U.S., where we've built a lot of dams, the native fish have not fared very well at all. So in my mind, it's a warning. It's especially a warning in other parts of the world where people are very dependent on fish. Because we've seen species extinctions, we've seen huge population declines, and if that happens in areas where most of the population is dependent on fish, there could be serious consequences. From a freshwater biodiversity perspective, there's probably nothing more damaging in these tropical rivers than dams. And so that, I mean, definitely, if I was going to talk with people who were thinking about dams as green energy, or thinking about building some of these large dams in high biodiversity areas, I think the first thing I would tell them is that these dams have the potential to cause the extinction of dozens or maybe even hundreds of unique species of fish.
But we have to remember that the source of these problems for fish is nearly ubiquitous, and it's a problem that's been around since the Industrial Revolution. In a world where we tend to measure success in economic terms, we've forgotten about some of our intrinsic connections with rivers and with fish. We need to get better at realizing that restored rivers provide a lot of economic value, but they also create much richer ecosystems for all of us to live in, to make healthier, more enjoyable lives. It's great to see the recognition of these values advocated not only by government agencies and nonprofit organizations, but also to see popular culture engaging with the restoration of our ecosystems.
I'm a passionate fly fisherman, and I really want my kids and my grandchildren to have a chance to experience the same things I have a chance to experience today. So for the last decade, I've been quite active in political debate in Finland, talking about how to conserve our fisheries, how to make our fish populations healthier, how to make sure that fish can actually migrate into their spawning grounds. I really wanted to bring World Fish Migration Day into Finland, and I've been teaming up with Mr. Pekka Haavisto in Finland, who's our previous Minister of Development, around parliamentary events, seminars in the Finnish Parliament where we talk about these things and bring together the leading scientists, the leading activists, and some really influential politicians to talk about how to make sure that the future for our rivers and our fisheries looks better than it does now. And bringing World Fish Migration Day to Finland and creating the European hub for World Fish Migration Day on that parliamentary seminar was a perfect fit, because we can go from local to an international platform and combine the forces of these two different events into one. And I believe the parliamentary seminar we arranged was a big success.
We have forgotten about the values of our rivers, the multiple values of our rivers. We think of them as resources to be tapped, but we forget that there are many other values that they provide, from fisheries to spiritual to recreational. All of these multiple values are ones that need to be considered as we're thinking about how we develop our rivers in a way that maintains important aspects like migration routes for fish.
Protecting and restoring rivers is the most hopeful form of conservation I know, because you literally can see a river come back to life if you do the right things, if you take out the dam, or you restore the flow, or you stop putting pollution into that river. Those rivers will come back, and they come back amazingly fast. And so if all the conservation work I've been in more than 30 years of my career, the most hopeful work is river restoration.
I think standing in a river that has flown there for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, almost an eternity, being a part of that moving force just roots you deep down into Mother Earth, grounds you, and there's something very meditative about those moments when all there is complete silence. You have a raging, roaring river. The sound of the river just blends into this total silence. And I think it's something very primitive that comes from thousands of years ago in human DNA, that we find something really therapeutic in those moments and in that environment.
I am on the edge of the Boschers Dam walkway. It's part of the fishway structure. We just finished up our event here celebrating World Fish Migration Day. I think for our first time, it went pretty well. I think have the kind of the background now and the skills to make this a bigger event the next time it comes around. And just getting the word out to, I mean, each one of them seemed like they walked away saying, wow, I never knew that, or that's really neat. And that's exactly the response that we want to get with something like this. So each one of them is going to go and talk about it, and for the next 2 years they can help us build excitement until we have another event here. I think one of the best things was the fish we were able to capture on the boats, and the interaction the young and old people were able to have with those fish, where the game representatives were able to hold those fish up, identify them, tell them what they were, a little bit of information about the fish itself and its life in the James River, and then they were able to touch the fish. I mean, these fish were big. They were very neat, and I think it was pretty cool for everyone to see that and then be able to talk to the folks who know a little bit about them.
Happy World Fish Migration Day!
World Fish Migration Day brings people to rivers with an excitement for restoring them and those massive migrations of fish. When I see kids and adults like me acting like kids, totally engaged and beaming with awe, I realize there's a lot of hope in our rivers. But here we are today, with thousands upon thousands of people, not only connecting with their rivers and celebrating fish, but also connecting with one another. It's through connecting people that we all learn and grow our knowledge base. It's the way we can develop and share solutions for fixing or protecting rivers that are still free-flowing. I'm hopeful that connecting around rivers can give us common cause. It can deepen our understanding of each other as well as our connections to the natural world. World Fish Migration Day helps to connect extraordinary humans that are devoting their lives to making the world a better place, one river at a time. And this is what makes me so incredibly hopeful. I'm excited for the future, and I'm proud to be a part of this movement. If this isn't something you've heard of or participated in before, I really hope you join us to celebrate the next World Fish Migration Day on May 16th, 2020. Just imagine how we can grow the impact of this event even larger. With funding to support more outreach, we can connect to more people on even more rivers and way more countries. We can start engaging people in their communities in a way that could lead to lasting and life-changing impacts. Please join me in celebrating rivers, the fish that swim through them, and the people all around them.